Welcome back to another edition of Football with Flags. Matty Ice here with you, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us once again. Today we've got our final Road to the Knockouts feature, which consists of Group H, involving Uruguay, Portugal, South Korea, and Ghana. This is a very intriguing group for me, certainly, and I think is right up there with the top in terms of just competitiveness, but also just the storylines that this group is going to tell. You've got the recent history with Uruguay and Portugal in the round of 16 in the 2018 World Cup. You've got the history between Portugal and Ghana facing each other in the group stage. You've got Uruguay and Ghana in terms of that insane tie they had in the quarterfinal in the 2010 World Cup with Suarez's handball and the missed penalty. And then you've got South Korea, who have failed to reach the knockout stages here in quite some time, but did have a fantastic win in 2018, beating the, at the time, defending world champs Germany 2-0. So we'll go ahead and kick it right off with Uruguay in this group. And for me, I think one of the biggest storylines is, are they the favorites coming into this group, being able to take the top spot and advance on to the knockouts? For me, I feel like that they certainly are. I think obviously Portugal possesses these biggest threat to them. But when you look at some of the attacking options that Uruguay have in terms of Suarez, Cavani still up there and Nunez and others, this is still a very strong attacking side that loves to push a lot of numbers forward and create pressure and score some goals. So, with that being said, I really feel like Uruguay are the favorites. It's just a matter of, can they come out and execute the way that we know they're capable of, in the same way that they did in 2018, really handling that group pretty well before they got to the knockout stages and faced Portugal. One question I do have with this team, though, is while they do have such a great attacking presence everywhere, how is their back line going to look? How is Muslera going to look if he's starting in goal? And like I said, again, the back line as well, some of the inconsistent play that we've seen and just some of the disappointing drop-offs here and there. They had a fantastic game against the U.S. back in June. But this team, I feel like, while they can score a ton of goals, they are a bit exposed sometimes in the back, especially when they like to get their outside backs forward as well. So, hopefully they're able to produce a lot of those chances into some great goals. However, depending on certain, style of play where they, potentially could lose possession, definitely could be exposed as well. But we did see them and Portugal both play in a pretty traditional 4-4-2 back in 2018. So it'll be interesting to see if they both kind of follow that same suit this time around. I think that their schedule favors them pretty well. They've got South Korea to kick off and Portugal right in the middle, so they're not having to worry about that game against Portugal at the very end for either side, especially if they wind up needing points, and they've got Ghana to finish things off. I think that for them is a pretty promising and favoring group. I think 7 points for them is a good number to have. Certainly, I think they could win all three group games, but again, 7 points will do them just fine as well in terms of being able to get out of here. So let's go ahead and move to Portugal, the team that, again, is probably going to rival them the best in this group for that top spot. Their group pretty similar, just flip-flopped around. They've got Ghana to kick things off, then Uruguay second, and South Korea to end it. We saw them play Ghana in their final group stage game in 2014 and wind up tying 2-2 in that game, which they really needed to get a result out of when the U.S. played Germany in their final game, and that helped the U.S. get through based off of goal differential. For me, I think a big question surrounding this team is, are they a potential champion? Can they really make a deep run? We've seen them win the Nations League back a few years ago. They won the Euros in 2016. However, that team looked a little bit different than this team now. But this team has some really young, promising talent in a group that I think that could really surround Ronaldo and some of those older guys like Pepe and potentially bring them to, a semifinal. I'm not sure, maybe a final run. But nevertheless, all cards are still on the table for sure. So, that's a big question surrounding this team, is can that young talent really rise up and bring this Portuguese side to a place where they feel like that they can truly compete for the World Cup title coming up here in November. For me, again, I feel like their magic number as well could easily be 7. They could go on and win all 3 group stage games as well, or they could even potentially lose to Uruguay, maybe even tie Ghana and, get a win against South Korea, something like that, end up with 5 points and still be in the clear. But for me, I still feel like the magic number for this team to help just solidify them through and make it easy would be 7. And again, We'll see where that takes them. But, one of the questions surrounding this team is, while, again, they have some great attacking options as well, pretty similar to the same with Uruguay. Sometimes we just see them kind of drop off in terms of, maybe a bit lazy in possession, pushing numbers too far forward without having enough return once they've lost possession, that type of thing. And again, we love to see this team as well, especially Ronaldo and others, look to counter when they really find a good break, where they, get a turnover, find something out of their back line, really look to get numbers forward as quickly and as sharply as possible. But if it doesn't always transpire into that naturally and easily, it can certainly turn into some exposure in the back, especially Pepe, if he's not able to keep his cool. And, we've even seen some goalkeeping mistakes from a few guys as well from this team in the past. So, I think that's a question as well that's going to be raised. I think that's going to look to see, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 goals possibly in that game between them. I think we could see, a similar game that they had against one another in the round of 16. Again, that was only 2-1, but still even something along the likes of, how Spain and Portugal played in one another with that 3-3 game they had in the group stage in 2018. So I'm sure the fans would love to see that, especially when you consider, again, all the attacking power that's going to be in that competition and what could come from that. So we will have to wait and see. But again, I think Portugal sitting in a pretty good spot with a good group schedule. I don't really think they need to worry about that whole true potential champion thing yet. Just let them get through the group stage and feel comfortable about themselves and stay healthy. And, we'll see how the cards fall in terms of who they might face to start the knockouts. Moving on now, though, to South Korea. This group schedule for them is obviously going to be very difficult. They've got Uruguay to start things off, then Ghana, and then Portugal to finish things out. Uruguay always do a pretty solid job in that first game of being able to collect points, whether it's not always the tidiest of games, maybe some, ugliness here and there, or just some, unfamiliarity as in terms of just trying to kind of get back into a rhythm with everyone within those first 90 minutes can be tough. But Uruguay, more often than not, usually are able to find a good result out of that, even if it's just a draw. I do think that 5 points for them is a good number to, hopefully rely on. I think that they could certainly get a draw from Uruguay and Portugal. I think Ghana is their best bet to get a win, and I think that can certainly happen. We like to see Ghana push a lot of numbers forward as well and look to counter also. But, we've seen South Korea, depending on how much possession that they have, and especially if they can get a lead early, do a pretty solid job of being able to contain that, or at least keep the score even killed, even into the latter stages of games, and then look to score some goals late and, try and steal a result. So, that very well could happen also. But, a question mark for me is using their defensive work rate to create attacking opportunities. Like I said, they've had some brilliancy in some of their goalkeeping play. They've had a pretty solid run in terms of some big games when they've played pretty well defensively. But again, it's how does that transpire into more attacking opportunities? And as we've seen on the current roster and some changes in recent games as well, sometimes they don't always bring a large number of attacking presence or of attacking presence into their roster. They bring a ton of midfielders, which is great in terms of being able to overload the field and keep possession and really just discombobulate their opponent. But at the same time, you still need to have some guys that are definitive and that can be lethal moving forward and, finish some good quality chances that you are able to create. So we'll have to see if Son and some of the others are up for it and if they're able to do so. Again, like we said, I think 5 points is a good magic number. But again, I think one of the headlines around this team, moving forward is, are they able to produce another big win in 2022? Can they defeat a Uruguay or a Portugal similar to the way that they did Germany in 2018? Now, again, Germany had the biggest target on their back more than anybody, and I think that how Mexico and Sweden had kind of shown some vulnerability with that squad in their first 2 games, I think that really kind of helped break some of those nerves for South Korea playing in that final group stage game. Now, again, South Korea was already eliminated from the competition by the time that game came around, and Germany were kind of playing with their backs against the wall, knowing that they needed to have everything and more out of that game. So I think, South Korea were playing with a little bit more, a little less pressure on their shoulders. But, that's not to say that, again, that they can't defeat Uruguay or Portugal. I'm just hoping that we're not coming down to a game where they're eliminated by the time they face Portugal and, they're just looking to defeat the Portuguese in an attempt to just collect some points before they head on home. So hopefully that game's going to really mean something. And also in the same sense that we hopefully, for so many fans wanting to see Ronaldo play in the knockout stages of potentially his last World Cup, what a crazy storyline it would be for, the South Koreans to somehow take the Portuguese out and force them away from that, with the possibility of, I guess, just Uruguay and Ghana moving forward, or the South Koreans potentially stealing the show. So we'll have to wait and see in terms of what happens with that. But moving on to the final team in this group, and our final team to talk about in this entire feature with these Road to the Knockouts is Ghana. Very excited to see them back. This is the first time they've been back since 2014. Their group schedule, again, just pretty much flip-flop with South Korea. They've got a really tough game, then they've got a very winnable game there in the middle, and then another difficult game right at the very end with Uruguay. I think 4 points for them is a good spot to be at. I think they could easily get another draw against Portugal. I think that they have a good opportunity to beat South Korea. They've got some really good pace, and they play with such emotion and pride as well, too. I love watching these African nations compete because they just give it their absolute all for all 90 minutes or however long that they're out there. And, wearing all that emotion and pride on your sleeve is fantastic to watch, just from a fan's perspective. And, certainly always rooting for them to do well in these kind of competitions, unless they're playing against the U.S., which, of course, they've had their fair share of taking our guys out and, getting some punishing results. But, again, this team, hopefully if they're able to do that, then they can go into that Uruguay game with a sense of, promise in terms of maybe just having to get a point out of it and then looking to maybe get through on goal differential, something like that, or somehow steal away a win, which certainly you think get them through with 6 points if they were able to do so. But again, a lot of questions still left to be answered. I think that, again, we've watched them play Portugal very well over the years. Again, I think South Korea is a good opportunity to try and, collect all 3 points, and probably their best chance to do so. And then, as you see on the screen, I think the biggest storyline for them coming in is, are they able to get payback against against Uruguay? None of these, as far as I know, none of these guys were around in 2010. I think a few might still be on the roster from 2014 when you look at IU and some others maybe, but 2010, I'm not sure how many guys are still, will have been on that roster that will be here. I know Asamoah Gyan and some others they're not going to probably make the roster, just being too old now at this point and probably retired. But again, nevertheless, you think about the age that some of these guys were probably at when they saw that happen, still being youngsters and kids, maybe teenagers and whatnot. This I'm sure still weighs heavy on their heart, considering that, again, that was the only World Cup that we've seen so far on African soil. It was the first opportunity that an African team was going to ever make to make a semifinal, not just in that tournament, but the entire history of the competition as well. And to have that stripped away in such a difficult manner, having such a blatant handball, then missing the penalty from Gyan, and then, losing out in penalties as well to Uruguay. I think I know for me, if I was a fan, of that country, it'd still be incredibly hard to swallow 12 years later. So, I think they're poised to really do something special in this competition if they're up for it. Their schedule wouldn't necessarily say favors them, but if you're talking about a European side to have in your group and then a South American side that you want to play as well, I think this paints a very pretty picture for Ghana in terms of some redemption and excitement to try and take down some giants ahead of them and look to get back to the knockout stages, which they have not been to since 2010. So this is a great opportunity for them. I did put like I said, I put their magic number at 4. I think that's realistic. I think they could certainly get more. But 4, I think, is a good starting point for this team in terms of goal differential and whatnot to try and, exploit their opponents and still try and get out of the group, maybe with a second place spot. But we'll have to wait and see. Big question, though, with this team is using that pace. How well are they able to do that when they're probably going to be outpossessed? Again, we'll see how they like to break forward. But I just hope Ghana doesn't get in a situation where, they're unable to find the rhythm and possession and looking to counter. And they're doing a great job of, creating turnovers, but then they're giving the ball immediately back and then, exploiting themselves when they were really just trying to, get numbers out forward and get on the front foot and beat their opponents with their pace and attacking ability. And, we see that happen sometimes with teams. They do a great job defensively, great work rate, are able to win a lot of defensive battles, but then as soon as they look to break out and they get numbers forward, they have a difficult time keeping possession and wind up giving it away immediately right back. And then it's a counter on top of a counter for their opposition being able to come back the other way. And, obviously we're going to see a little bit better technical ability from most of the teams they're playing in this group. So I hope that doesn't come back to bite them and that they're able to, consistently put on pressure in that way, but also defend consistently and realize that defensive work rate's going to hopefully produce more attacking opportunities, especially on the counter for a team such as this with so much speed. So we will have to wait and see about that. But I think that is going to go ahead and wrap up this entire edition. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you would. And again, we've got plenty more content coming out. I know it's been a little slow here recently, but it's going to start picking up soon for sure. And thanks so much for joining us as always. And until next time, guys, peace out.